Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Have you ever wondered why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to read in Surah Al-Alaq verses 1 until 5? One of the forms of reading is to understand the patterns in His creation through data. This is the role of statistics as a tool to read world phenomena objectively. So, welcome to my channel, and I'm Khalidatul Fajriyah Shaiful. I'm gonna explain 5 important concepts of research statistics, namely correlation, t-test, validity, reliability, and analysis of variance. While we find the wisdom in the Quran, let's check it out. Part 1. Correlation. So, what is correlation? According to 10 correlation studies, examine whether there is a relationship between two or more variables. That is, if there is a change in one variable, it tends to correspond to a change in the other variable. The strength of this relationship is measured by correlation coefficient, ranging from -1 to +1. If it is close to +1, it means a very strong positive correlation. If it is close to -1, it means a very strong negative correlation. And if it is close to 0, it means there is no significant linear relationship. Okay, for example, does the amount of time spent reading the Quran correlate with peace of mind? If it shows a positive correlation, then reading the Quran for longer tends to increase sobriety. Keep in mind that finding a positive correlation doesn't prove that reading the Quran causes sobriety to increase. It may be that calm people are motivated to read the Quran, or that other factors such as faith, community, or other worship practices influence both. Part 2. T-test. The t-test is a parametric statistic used in testing the comparative hypothesis of the mean of two samples with interval or ratio data, meaning that the t-test is a statistical test to compare the mean of two independent groups. Hypothesis in a t-test. Null hypothesis with assumption there is no significant difference between the two groups, and alternative hypothesis with assumption there is a significant difference between the two groups. Okay, for the process, collect data from the two groups, then calculate the t-test statistic based on the mean, variance, and sample size. Then compare the result with the critical value or use the p-value. If the p-value is less than 0.05, then null hypothesis is rejected, which means there is a significant difference. If the p-value is more than 0.05, then null hypothesis is accepted, which means there is no evidence of a significant difference. Okay, for example, is the average Quran memorization of students who participate in Tahfidz guidance significantly different from those who don't participate? We collect data from the memorization test scores of Tahfidz and non-Tahfidz groups, then calculate the t-test statistic and compare the results. As I said earlier, if p-value less than 0.05, then null hypothesis is rejected, which means there is a significant difference in the average memorization of the Tahfidz group and the non-Tahfidz group. If p-value more than 0.05, then null hypothesis is accepted, which means there is no evidence of a significant difference in the average memorization of tahfidz and non-tahfidz groups. This is related to the word of Allah in the Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 12. This verse constructs believers not to be prejudiced. This means that this test invites us not to assume two groups are different without strong evidence. Part 3. Validity. According to Azwar, validity indicates the extent to which a measuring instrument is able to measure the concept it is intended to measure. The following formula, which is most commonly used to test the validity of instrument items, such as questionnaires, is the person-product moment correlation. The validity test aims to ascertain whether an item in a research instrument actually measures the intended variable. Here are the steps for the validity test. Calculate the total score of all items per respondent. Then, calculate the correlation between the score of each item and the total score using the formula above. Compare the R result with the critical value of the percent table. For example, the significant level is 5%. If R count more than R table, then the item is valid. If R count less than R table, then the item is invalid and must be revised or discarded. Then, how to interpret the results? Alpha value of R more than 3 is generally considered to meet validity, depending on the sample size. For example, if item A has R 0.62 while R table is 0.3, it means that the item significantly measures the variable under study. Keep in mind, the minimum sample is usually 30 until 50 respondents for accurate results. Analysis tools are usually automated with software such as SPSS, Excel, or R. Validity can also be tested with confirmatory factor analysis or CFA or content validity. For example, we have a customer satisfaction questionnaire with 5 questions. We calculate the correlation of each question to the total score of the 5 questions. If the correlation result of a question is low, for example, R is 0.1, it means that the question doesn't represent customer satisfaction and needs to be improved. Conversely, if R is 0.07, it means that the question is very relevant to measuring satisfaction. This validity test is also in line with the word of Allah in Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 6, regarding the command to do tabayyun. This is the principle of validity. In Islam, we are obligated to verify the truth of information, just as researchers ensure their measuring instruments are accurate. Part 4. Reliability. What is reliability? Reliability is the level of stability of measurement results when remeasured at different times. That is, reliability measures the consistency of a measuring instrument, ensuring that the measurement results remain stable and reliable even if repeated or assessed by different parties. These are the methods to test reliability. The first is Cranberg alpha. It measures the internal consistency between items in an instrument. For example, how coherent the 10 questions of a questionnaire are in measuring stress. A value of alpha more than 0.7 is considered reliable, indicating all items work uniformly to measure the same construct. The second, test-retest, is comparing measurement results at different times. Then the third, split half, is dividing the instrument into two parts and comparing the results. The last, iterator reliability, is measure the consistency of iterator results. Here are some steps of the reliability test. Decide on the test method. Choose a method such as cranberry alpha, split half, or test-retest, and remeasure. Use the same instrument at different times or by subgrouping. Then, analyze the data. Use statistical software to calculate reliability values. Then, the last, consistency evaluation. The instrument is considered reliable if the reliability value in case cranberry alpha is greater than 0.7. Okay, for example, in a work motivation survey, cranberry alpha value is calculated to measure the internal consistency between questions. If the alpha value is 0.8, then the instrument is declared reliable. In an Islamic perspective, reliability reflects the principle of istiqamah. Just as a small but istiqamah charity, such as regular almsgiving, is more valuable in the eyes of Allah than a large sporadic charity. A reliable measuring instrument produces valid data and can be used as a basis for decision making. Reliability in research is also in line with Islamic scientific morals, namely rigor, honesty, and professionalism, because only consistent data is worthy of being conveyed as knowledge, as hadith narrated by Bukhari convey even one verse. Thus, ensuring instrument reliability is not only a methodological agreement, but also a form of intellectual piety of a Muslim researcher. Part 5. Analysis of variance. Okay, the last is analysis of variance or ANOVA. ANOVA is one of the multivariate analysis techniques that serves to distinguish the mean of more than two groups of data by comparing their variances. In the other words, ANOVA is the super version of the t-test. It compares the means of three or more groups. Here are some kinds of ANOVA. The first is one-way ANOVA test. One-way analysis of variance is a parametric statistical technique used for testing differences in several groups of averages, where there is only one independent or independent variable divided into several groups and one dependent or dependent variable. The second is two-way ANOVA. Test the effect of two factors on the dependent variable simultaneously. Then the third is repeated measures ANOVA. This is used when data is taken from the same group at different times. Okay, for example, to evaluate whether there is a significant difference in students' spiritual values between three learning methods: group discussion, clerical lecture, and Quran-based e-learning. The working principle breaks down the total variation in the data into two sources. The first, between group variation due to treatment or method differences, and the second, within group variation due to random factors such as individual motivation. If the between group variation is significantly greater than the within group variation, it is concluded that there is a difference in means at least one group is different, and then further testing is conducted to identify which group is different. The link with Islamic principles is manifested through Surah Al-Hashr, verse 18. ANOVA reflects the message of this verse in three aspects. For the first, database muhasabah or introspection. ANOVA invites us to pay critical attention to data variations for work evaluation. For example, the effectiveness of da'wah methods in preparation for a better tomorrow. Then, number 2, justice in diversity. Islam respects diversity as sunnatullah, as in Quran Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 13. ANOVA analyzes differences between groups, for example, student background or worship methods, objectively without prejudice, in line with the command to be fair in Quran Surah An-Nisa, verse 135. And the third, optimization of ummah resources. ANOVA results help allocate resources efficiently to the best methods. For example, the most effective tahfidh program as a form of piety in advancing the ummah. An example of application in education: an educator can use ANOVA to test whether the average Quran memorization of students is significantly different between Islamic boarding house, hybrid programs, and online learning. The results become the basis for fair policies to improve the quality of education. ANOVA only proves whether or not there is a difference, not causation. The result must be interpreted wisely by considering context, Islamic values, and other factors, such as environment or sincere intentions. Thus, ANOVA becomes a scientific muhasabah tool that is in line with Allah's command to analyze the diversity of His creation for the benefit of the future. So, statistics is not just numbers, it is a tool to understand the sunnatullah that Allah has ordained. The correlation is recognizing His patterns of relationship in His creation. And the t-test at ANOVA is being fair in comparison. Then, the validity and reliability is maintaining the honesty and consistency of data. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Jathiyah verse 13, and He has subjected to you all that is in the heaven and the earth as a mercy from Him. Let's utilize statistics to read His grace with integrity and faith. Okay, like, share, and subscribe if you found this video useful. Thank you for watching, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.